What happens when an NFL coach starts treating his own quarterback like a threat instead of a teammate? Because right now in Cleveland, that's exactly what it looks like. The Browns were supposed to be the team built for redemption, a roster stacked with talent, a fan base starving for a comeback, and a coach who claimed to have the blueprint for success. But instead, what they've got is chaos disguised as strategy. And at the center of it all, Kevin Stefanski, a man who somehow managed to turn a quarterback competition into a full-blown scandal. It started small, just whispers at first. Reports hinting that something felt off inside the Browns' locker room. That rookie quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, son of Dylan Sanders, wasn't being treated like every other player. That for some reasons the team still refuses to explain, he wasn't being given a fair shot to compete. Then came the ESPN segment. And that's when the whole thing exploded. Canty, a Super Bowl champion turned analyst, walked onto national television and did what no one else in Cleveland had the guts to do. He called Kevin Stefanski out. Not politely, not subtly, but with the kind of raw honesty that makes entire studios go silent. He didn't just question the play calling, he questioned the entire philosophy behind the Browns' quarterback decisions. He accused Stefanski of lying about Shedeur's readiness, and protecting Dylan Gabriel, a quarterback whose recent performances have looked more like blooper reels than game film. Canty called it nonsensical. He said what every frustrated fan had been thinking for weeks, that Cleveland's offense doesn't just lack direction, it lacks common sense. And that's when things turned ugly. Because once those words left Canty's mouth, the narrative shifted. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a struggling offense or a bad game plan. This was about politics, power, and a head coach caught red-handed trying to defend the indefensible. Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Within hours, the clip went viral. Fans flooded social media demanding answers. Analysts started pulling old quotes, replaying press conferences, connecting dots Stefanski probably hoped no one would notice. The message was clear. The Browns weren't just losing games, they were losing trust. And as the pressure mounted, one thing became undeniable. Shedeur Sanders wasn't the problem in Cleveland, he was the victim of it. So what really pushed Canty to that breaking point? Why did he decide to publicly torch an NFL coach on live television? And what's really going on inside the Browns locker room that has the entire league watching like it's a Netflix drama? Because make no mistake, this isn't just a quarterback controversy anymore. This is a power struggle, a public reckoning, and maybe the biggest test of Kevin Stefanski's career. And if what Canty exposed is even half true, Cleveland's about to learn the hard way that sometimes the real opponent isn't across the field, it's standing on your own sideline. It was supposed to be another calm morning on ESPN's Get Up. You know the drill stats, predictions, and polite debates that fade the second you turn off the TV. But that day, things took a turn. Because when Canty sat down, he didn't come to talk football, he came to drop grenades. Before the cameras even stopped rolling, you could feel the tension. Canty leaned forward, locked in, and started dismantling the Cleveland Browns, like a man who'd seen enough nonsense to last a lifetime. "This is nonsensical," he said, and the studio went dead silent. What followed wasn't analysis, it was an eruption. Canty didn't just criticize Kevin Stefanski, he dismantled him. Every word hit like a jab, every sentence landed like a knockout. "I'm trying to figure out if Kevin Stefanski even wants to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns," he said, his tone half disbelief, half disgust. That line changed everything. Because it wasn't just an insult, it was a statement, a challenge. A moment where an ex-player looked straight into the camera and said what everyone else was too afraid to admit, that the Browns head coach had lost control of his team, his locker room, and maybe even his sense of reality. The rant spread across social media faster than wildfire. Fans clipped it, reshared it, captioned it with things like, "Finally someone said it," and "Canty's cooking Cleveland." Within hours, the clip had millions of views. It wasn't just a hot take anymore, it was a movement. And the reason it resonated so hard was simple. He was right. For weeks, the Browns' quarterback situation had looked like something out of a bad sitcom. Dylan Gabriel, who was supposed to be the steady hand under center, was putting up stats so ugly they could make a defensive coordinator blush, dead last in air yards. Near the bottom in efficiency. Turnovers like clockwork. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders, the talented rookie the franchise had hyped up just months earlier, was collecting dust on the bench, watching every mistake from the sidelines like a prisoner of his own potential. Stefanski's defense? We're bringing him along slowly." But Canty called that out for what it really was, an excuse. He accused Stefanski of lying to the public, of hiding behind vague answers and meaningless quotes. "You can't tell me this kid isn't ready," he said. "You're just scared to find out what happens when he proves you wrong." And that's when the gloves came off. Canty didn't just question play calls, he questioned character. The idea that a coach would rather protect his ego than give his team its best shot at winning. He exposed what many insiders had whispered for weeks, that Stefanski's loyalty wasn't to the Browns' success, it was to his own narrative. The studio panel froze. You could almost see the producers debating whether to cut to commercial, but it was too late, the fire was already burning. Canty's rant wasn't just another media moment, it was a reckoning. It forced Cleveland's front office, its fans, and even its players to look in the mirror. And for the first time in a long time, the question wasn't, can the Browns win? It was, do they even want to? But if anyone thought the storm would end there, they were wrong. Because what happened after Canty's outburst, the lies, the deflections, and the mounting chaos would take Cleveland's quarterback drama to a level even reality TV couldn't script. If you ever wanted to see how fast a promising season can turn into a dumpster fire, just look at the Cleveland Browns quarterback room. Because right now, it's not a competition, it's a catastrophe. Dylan Gabriel was supposed to be the guy. The calm, accurate passer who'd keep things steady while Shedeur Sanders developed behind the scenes. But instead, he's been playing football like it's a game of hot potato and the ball's lava. 4 games in, and Gabriel's stats look like a horror story written by a defensive coordinator. Dead last in yards per attempt, second worst in efficiency. Interceptions at the worst possible moments, the kind that make fans groan before the ball even hits the ground. Every drive feels like deja vu. Missed reads, panic throws, and decisions that make you wonder if he's even looking at the same playbook as everyone else. Meanwhile, on the sideline, Shedeur Sanders is sitting there helmet on, eyes locked in, waiting for a chance that never comes. You can almost feel the frustration through the TV screen. The same guy who dominated college football, who proved he could handle pressure, can't even get a single meaningful snap, not because he isn't ready, but because his coach refuses to let him prove it. And that's where the real story begins. Because Kevin Stefanski's reasoning doesn't add up. He keeps saying the same thing in every press conference, that he's bringing the rookies along, that development takes time, that the process matters. But let's be honest, what process? The process of losing games in the exact same way every week? The process of pretending everything's fine while the locker room loses faith? Fans aren't buying it anymore. The analysts aren't buying it. And after Chris Canty's explosive rant, even the players seem to be looking around like, is anyone going to say something? The moment that summed it up perfectly, when Cleveland's star player slammed his helmet on the sideline after Gabriel's second interception. That wasn't just frustration, that was a message. The kind that says, we all see what's happening here. But Stefanski didn't blink. He doubled down. Even after the bye week, when he had every chance to reset, to make a change, to give the team a spark, he stuck with Gabriel. No adjustments. No accountability. Just the same broken formula. Served fresh. And it's not just costing them games, it's costing them credibility. Because in the NFL, you can lose a game. You can even lose a season. But when you lose the locker room, you're done. And right now, that's exactly where Kevin Stefanski's headed. Shedeur's presence is like a ticking clock. Every bad throw, every interception, every wasted drive just gets louder. Fans are chanting his name, analysts are dissecting every decision, and the entire organization looks one more loss away from collapse. And the worst part? Stefanski knows it. You can see it in his pressers, the nervous smirk, the vague answers, the endless deflections. He looks like a man trying to talk his way out of quicksand. But as Canty pointed out, pride is a dangerous thing in football. Because once you start protecting your ego instead of your team, you've already lost. The Browns aren't just dealing with a quarterback issue, they're dealing with a leadership crisis. And the longer Stefanski refuses to face it, the closer this disaster creeps towards something no coach can survive: total implosion. But this wasn't just about performance anymore. The cracks in the locker room were starting to show. Players divided, whispers growing louder. And that's when things behind the scenes took a turn that even Cleveland fans didn't see coming. You can tell when a locker room starts breaking apart. It's not always shouting matches or dramatic sideline fights. Sometimes it's the silence that says it all. And right now, that silence in Cleveland is deafening. Players aren't just frustrated, they're confused. They're watching a season slip through their fingers while their head coach insists everything's part of the plan. But no one seems to know what that plan actually is. When Dylan Gabriel throws another interception, the defense doesn't even react anymore. No eye rolls, no shouting, just that quiet, collective disappointment. The kind you see in a team that's given up on explanations. Because what's the point of asking questions when the answers never make sense? The tension reached its boiling point during that fourth game. Gabriel tossed his second brutal pick in the second half, the kind that kills morale instantly, and Cleveland's top receiver slammed his helmet so hard it echoed through the broadcast mics. You could see it on the sideline, players avoiding eye contact, coaches pretending not to notice, Stefanski standing still like a statue. No emotion, no accountability, just the same expressionless calm that's been haunting this team for weeks. But calm isn't confidence anymore, it's denial. And that denial is splitting the locker room in two. On one side, the veterans who've been through this before, tired of false hope, tired of watching another season crumble. On the other, the younger players, guys like Shedeur Sanders, who still believe things can change if they're just given a chance. Except that chance never comes. Every week, Shedeur suits up, locks in, and waits for his name to be called. And every week, it's the same story. Clipboard, headset, silence. You can almost feel the energy shift on the sideline whenever his camera shot pops up on the screen. Fans start chanting his name. Teammates glance his way, but Stefanski acts like he doesn't even exist. That's not just bad leadership, that's a message that says, my pride matters more than your potential. And in a league built on trust and chemistry, that's the kind of message that tears teams apart. Insiders started whispering that some players have already checked out, that the defense, which has been carrying the team all season, is tired of cleaning up Gabriel's mistakes, that even assistant coaches are privately questioning why the obvious move isn't being made. Because at this point, it's not about stats, it's about respect. When your players stop believing in you, it doesn't matter how many plays you call, no one's listening anymore. And that's exactly what's happening in Cleveland. The Browns have talent, no question, but talent without trust is chaos. And chaos is what Stefanski has created, a locker room that looks united from the outside but is quietly falling apart from the inside. It's become a team divided between the players who still have hope and the coach who's lost the plot. And while the locker room crumbles, the cameras are rolling, the fans are watching, and ESPN, they're just getting warmed up. Because what happened next when analysts started digging deeper into Stefanski's story turned this from locker room tension into a full-blown public scandal. When Canty dropped his truth bomb live on ESPN, most thought it was just another heated sports take, but within hours, it became something much bigger. Because what Canty exposed wasn't just frustration, it was a pattern. A pattern of lies, deflection, and double talk that had been building for months inside the Cleveland Browns facility. ESPN producers immediately ran the clip across every platform: Get Up, First Take, SportsCenter. And with each replay, fans started noticing something deeper: the inconsistencies, the contradictions. The moments when Kevin Stefanski's words didn't line up with reality. Reporters began pulling receipts, interviews from training camp, quotes from press conferences. Old sound bites where Stefanski swore the quarterback room was built on competition and equal opportunity. But the tape told a different story. Because week after week, no matter how bad Dylan Gabriel looked, no matter how frustrated the team got, Shedeur Sanders stayed glued to the bench, untouched, untested, and ignored. Then came the kicker. A resurfaced interview where Stefanski claimed he was bringing Shedeur along slowly, that it was about development and maturity. But fans noticed what Canty noticed too: that exact same line had been used before, word for word, about other young players who mysteriously never got their shot. It wasn't coaching, it was stalling. And once people realized that, the narrative flipped. Suddenly, Kevin Stefanski wasn't the steady, methodical coach holding things together. He was the guy hiding behind football cliches to cover up a mess of his own making. Canty called it a red-handed lie. He said Stefanski was manipulating the story not because Shedeur wasn't ready, but because Stefanski didn't want to admit he'd backed the wrong quarterback. That playing Shedeur would expose the truth he'd been avoiding all season. Dylan Gabriel wasn't the future, he was the mistake. And the more Canty talked, the more everything started lining up. Fans began comparing quotes side by side the coach's promises of equal competition against the cold reality of Gabriel's continued starts. Analysts replayed film showing Gabriel missing wide-open receivers, while Shedeur stayed silent on the bench. Even insiders from within the organization started hinting that something didn't smell right. The narrative became impossible to contain. Stefanski wasn't just defending his quarterback, he was defending his ego. And that ego was starting to cost the Browns everything. What made it worse was the timing. Cleveland was already spiraling, the losses piling up, the media circling like vultures. And instead of addressing the real issue, Stefanski kept dodging, repeating the same lifeless lines about focus, development, and process. To the fans, it started sounding less like leadership and more like damage control. Every press conference felt scripted, robotic, like he was talking to himself more than anyone else. "We're building something here," he'd say, but no one could see what that something was. And when you combine losing, lying, and locker room distrust, you don't just have a bad season, you have a mutiny waiting to happen. Canty knew it, the fans knew it, even the players knew it. By the end of that week, the story wasn't just trending, it was erupting. The headlines didn't pull punches. Stefanski exposed on ESPN. Shedeur Sanders snubbed fans' demand answers. Browns locker room imploding from inside out. Cleveland was in full crisis mode. The front office was scrambling. The coaching staff was silent. And the rest of the league was watching, wondering how long it would take before the truth finally came out. But the truth was already out, and it was ugly. Because while Stefanski kept talking about trusting the process had failed, and now the only thing left to trust was the chaos. But this story wasn't just about lies or politics anymore. It was about one player, the rookie who refused to complain, stayed patient, and let his play do the talking. Because while the media tore Stefanski apart, Shedeur Sanders was quietly becoming something else, the symbol of everything Cleveland was too scared to embrace. While Cleveland spiraled into chaos, Shedeur Sanders stayed silent. No public complaints, no angry tweets, no passive-aggressive soundbites. Just focus. Pure, quiet focus. And that's what made it sting even more. Because this isn't some average rookie waiting for his turn. This is Shedeur Sanders, the same quarterback who carried Colorado through wars in college football. The same guy who played behind one of the weakest offensive lines in the country and still managed to shine. The kid who took more hits than most quarterbacks could survive and still got back up smiling. He came into the NFL ready to prove he belonged, ready to show he was more than just Deion Sanders' son. But instead of a chance, he got politics. Instead of trust, he got excuses. Every week, Shedeur showed up early, stayed late, watched film, led scout reps doing everything right. But no matter how loud the media got or how bad Dylan Gabriel looked, Kevin Stefanski kept pretending the conversation didn't exist. Reporters asked about Shedeur, and Stefanski dodged like a politician avoiding a scandal. "We're happy with our quarterback room," he'd say, or "we're focused on development." But fans saw through it. They weren't hearing strategy, they were hearing fear. Fear of being proven wrong. Because if Shedeur got a real shot and performed, and let's be honest, he probably would, it wouldn't just expose Dylan Gabriel, it would expose Kevin Stefanski. So Stefanski did what too many coaches do when pride gets in the way of progress. He buried potential. But here's the thing about talent like Shedeur's, you can't hide it forever. You can feel the tension building every time the camera pans to him on the sideline. Calm, locked in, waiting. That quiet confidence doesn't fade. It grows. And now, the fans see it. The analysts see it. Even the locker room feels it. Because no matter how deep the politics run, players know who can play. And Shedeur can play. He's not the problem in Cleveland, he's the solution waiting to be unleashed. But the longer Stefanski keeps him sidelined, the more it looks like this isn't about development anymore. It's about denial. And that denial is about to push Cleveland towards something even worse than losing a full-blown civil war inside its own organization. At this point, the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation doesn't look like a football plan, it looks like a circus. And Kevin Stefanski? He's the ringmaster. Because while other teams are fine-tuning their game plans, the Browns are busy juggling quarterbacks like they're auditioning for a reality show called Who Wants to Be QB1? In the span of just a few weeks, Cleveland has rotated through more quarterbacks than most teams do in 2 seasons. They traded for one, benched another, promoted Shedeur, then acted like they forgot he existed. It's a never-ending shuffle that makes zero sense, unless, of course, you realize it's not about performance anymore. It's about politics. Reporters started calling it the clown car of quarterbacks because every Sunday, the same question popped up. Who's climbing out this week? Dylan Gabriel again? Tyler Huntley? Bailey Zappi off the practice squad? Even players looked confused during warm-ups, glancing over to see who was actually starting. It's chaos disguised as strategy. And Stefanski seems weirdly comfortable in it, as if confusion is the plan. Every time someone asks why Shedeur isn't getting reps, he dodges. We're evaluating all options. Translation? We have no idea what we're doing. Behind the scenes, whispers started to grow louder. This wasn't just indecision, it was an internal power struggle. The front office wanted Shedeur on the field. The fans demanded it. But Stefanski kept pushing back, trotting out his guy like a stubborn parent, refusing to admit he's lost. It stopped being football, it became ego management. Even the locker room could feel it. Veterans on defense reportedly started asking why they were breaking their backs just to watch the offense implode every Sunday. Meanwhile, the younger guys, the ones who saw Shedeur light it up in college, were starting to lose faith in the message coming from the top. And through it all, the optics got worse. The Browns looked like a team running in circles, pretending it was forward motion. Their QB competition became a punchline on every sports show. You could almost hear the late-night jokes writing themselves. Every team deals with adversity. Every coach makes tough calls. But Cleveland's chaos isn't random, it's self-inflicted. It's what happens when pride becomes policy and leadership turns into stubbornness. Because let's be honest, if you can't decide who your quarterback is 6 weeks into the season, it's not a strategy problem, it's an identity crisis. And while the Browns are busy defending bad decisions, their best talent, Shedeur Sanders, is collecting dust. At some point, it stops being about development and starts being about disrespect. But then came the breaking point, because what Kevin Stefanski did next wasn't just another questionable move, it was personal, it was public, and it changed the entire conversation in Cleveland. At first, it was subtle, the kind of quiet tension that only insiders noticed. But then Kevin Stefanski stopped hiding it, and that's when it became war. It started with one shocking report. During a closed-door conversation with Brown's staff, Stefanski allegedly said, "Over my dead body will Shedeur get a shot?" That line hit social media like a lightning bolt. The head coach of an NFL franchise publicly drawing a line in the sand against his own rookie quarterback. And suddenly, this wasn't just about football anymore. This was about ego, power, and pride spiraling out of control. Reporters asked Stefanski about it during the next press conference. He didn't confirm it, but he didn't deny it either. Just the same vague language. We're focused on the guys who give us the best chance to win. But everyone knew what that meant. He was done pretending. From that moment on, you could feel the tension every time his name and Shedeur's were mentioned in the same sentence. Reporters noticed he wouldn't even say Shedeur's name out loud, just the young guy or the rookie. It was petty, but it said everything. Behind the scenes, things got uglier. Sources started hinting that Stefanski was quietly pushing for Bailey Zappi to be elevated from the practice squad, not because he earned it, but because it would send a message. A power play to prove that he, not the front office, controlled the depth chart. And if true, that's not coaching, that's sabotage. Even analysts who defended Stefanski in the past started to turn. ESPN hosts were calling it shameful. Fans were furious, chanting, "Start Shedeur," outside the stadium. Social media went nuclear. Clips of Canty's original rant resurfaced, this time with captions like, "He tried to warn us." The optics were devastating, because no matter how Stefanski tried to spin it, it looked like he was scared of what might happen if Shedeur actually played well. And that fear was destroying everything around him. Within the locker room, players started picking sides. Some still stood by the coach, others quietly rallied behind Shedeur. But the damage was done, the trust was gone. It's rare for an NFL coach to openly go to war with one of his own players, especially a rookie. But Stefanski crossed that line, and once he did, there was no coming back. The Browns had officially become the NFL's most dysfunctional soap opera, complete with secrets, power struggles, and now, open defiance. And while Stefanski clung to control, Shedeur did what he always does. He stayed calm. No rants, no tweets, no interviews, just preparation. Waiting for the moment when the truth would speak for itself on the field. But that moment was coming faster than anyone expected. Because the public war had one final consequence Stefanski never saw coming. It united the fans, the media, and even former players against him. And what came next wasn't just backlash, it was a revolt. The moment the story broke, Cleveland turned into a battlefield, not on the field, but online, in the stands, and across every sports network in America. Fans weren't just upset anymore, they were furious, because this wasn't about stats or performance, it was about respect. The second those reports of Stefanski's "over my dead body" comment surfaced, it was over. Hashtags started trending within hours. Number Start Shedeur, number Free Shedeur, and number Fire Stefanski flooded social media like wildfire. Browns Nation was done being quiet. And it wasn't just fans. Former players started speaking up too. Guys who had worn the Browns jersey before, who knew exactly how this organization could chew up talent and spit it out, were suddenly everywhere, posting cryptic tweets like, "This ain't about football anymore." Analysts joined in too. ESPN, Fox Sports, even podcasts that never talk about Cleveland, everyone had an opinion. And for once, they all agreed. Stefanski wasn't protecting the team, he was protecting himself. One segment on First Take summed it up perfectly. Shedeur's not the problem, he's the proof. Proof that Cleveland's been choosing pride over progress for years. Every highlight reel of Dylan Gabriel's turnovers, every press conference where Stefanski danced around questions, every clip of Shedeur standing quietly on the sideline, it all came together like puzzle pieces in front of millions of viewers. And the picture they formed wasn't pretty. Fans started showing up to games with signs that read, "Let Shedeur play." During one broadcast, cameras even caught a chant breaking out from the stands, "We want Shedeur." You could hear it echoing through the stadium. And right there, for a brief moment, it didn't sound like a crowd, it sounded like a protest. Cleveland had officially turned on its own head coach. The front office could feel it too. Sources claimed executives were evaluating all options. That's PR code for "we're losing patience." Stefanski's job wasn't just in jeopardy, it was hanging by a thread made of public outrage. And all of it, every bit of this chaos came back to one simple truth. A coach who refused to adapt. Because Shedeur didn't ask for this drama, he didn't ignite the feud, but through his silence, he became the symbol of everything Cleveland fans wanted: accountability, change, and hope. Meanwhile, the team that once promised a new era had turned into a national punchline. Talk shows mocked the Browns circus. Memes flooded the internet with Stefanski photoshopped as a reality show host handing out QB roses. But this wasn't entertainment. This was collapse in real time. Cleveland was breaking apart, and everyone from the fans to the players to the front office knew it. The only question left was whether Stefanski would finally swallow his pride or let the Browns burn for it. Because if there's one thing history's taught us about this franchise, it's that they always find a new way to hit rock bottom. And this time, the fall was personal. By the time the smoke cleared, the Cleveland Browns weren't just in a quarterback controversy, they were in a full-blown identity crisis. The locker room was fractured. The fan base was in open revolt. And the head coach, Kevin Stefanski, looked like a man standing on the deck of a sinking ship, still insisting everything was fine while the water poured in around him. What started as a debate over who should play quarterback had turned into something much darker, a franchise at war with itself. Canty's outburst on ESPN wasn't just a rant anymore, it was a prophecy. Everything he warned about was happening in real time. The lies, the pride, the chaos, all of it boiling over, dragging the Browns deeper into dysfunction. Inside the facility, trust was gone. Players whispered that the energy felt off. The bond between Stefanski and the locker room, once built on belief, had turned into suspicion. Every decision he made was second-guessed. Every speech sounded emptier than the last. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders kept doing what he's done since day one, staying calm, working in silence, and letting the world spin around him. The kid who was supposed to be the future had become a ghost in his own franchise, a symbol of what could have been, if only Cleveland had the courage to let him lead. And maybe that's what hurts the most for Browns fans. Because this story was never about whether Shedeur could play, everyone knows he can. It was about whether the organization could finally break free from its own curse, the curse of bad leadership, bad decisions, and the never-ending cycle of self-destruction. But instead, they chose pride over progress. Again. Now the team is staring down a future clouded with uncertainty. Stefanski's job security? On life support. The locker room chemistry? Non-existent. And Shedeur's future in Cleveland? hanging by a thread. Reports claim trust between the coaching staff and Shedeur's camp has completely collapsed, that the relationship might be beyond repair. And with every passing week, rumors grow louder that Shedeur's days in Cleveland are numbered not because of his talent, but because of the politics wrapped around it. It's a brutal reality. The Browns didn't just lose games, they lost their direction. Meanwhile, Canty's voice still echoes across the league, the clip replayed again and again, now serving as a reminder that sometimes it takes an outsider to tell the uncomfortable truth. Because this wasn't just about a coach, it wasn't just about a player, it was about accountability, the one thing Cleveland's been running from for years. And now, they've run out of places to hide. So maybe, just maybe, this is the moment the Browns finally look in the mirror. Maybe this time someone inside that building decides enough is enough. Because this franchise has spent decades as the NFL's punchline. And the only way to change that is to finally stop laughing at the problem and start fixing it. Because if they don't, Shedeur Sanders won't be the one leaving Cleveland, he'll be escaping it. And when that day comes, Kevin Stefanski won't just lose his quarterback. He'll lose the last bit of faith this city ever had in him.